Hi, Bobby Herzberg here of the Mercatus Center at George Mason University again. And as we were noting last time in our discussion of the difference between mainline economics and mainstream economics, I was suggesting that Hayek's work really challenging the scientism of economics had tried to turn the field in a very different direction, largely to say not that we couldn't make predictions about what would happen in economic settings, but that the predictions could not be as limited as some of economic science was suggesting at the time. Instead, he saw this more as a process. The market provided a discovery process that we could use to determine spontaneous types of orders as opposed to the types of orders that were assumed or predicted in regular equilibrium-based science. So how do we go from that and what Hayek said to others that we would include in mainline economics in the modern era? Well, next we might want to include the work of James Buchanan and his contributions in the area and field of public choice theory. Public choice theory really put economics on its heels, largely because in economics, when we saw the concept of market failure, we frequently suggested that if in fact a market failed, we would need some kind of political intervention to improve the nature of that competitive market and make it more competitive than would naturally occur under certain circumstances. What James Buchanan and Gordon Tullock and many others in the field of public choice suggested, however, was the same sort of narrow interests that occurred in economic theory and drove us to these market failures would also occur in the political arena. And that if we didn't understand that self-interest would operate in politics as effectively as it operated in economics, we would miss and misrepresent the kinds of outcomes we would expect. So there was no simple solution to turn things away from economics and the market into the political arena and solve all of these dilemmas. By refocusing our attention on the economic interests or political interests of politicians and people operating in public policy, they suggested how we might start to think about the ideas of constitutional theory and institutional arrangements that would most facilitate the best kind of outcomes to serve the interests of citizens more broadly, and not simply to rush to trusting in government policymakers to produce a better outcome than the free market might produce. Now, in doing that, they do two things. They focus on the fact that politicians have narrow interests, but they also focus our attention on the fact that we might have market failure, but we also might have government failure. And if we have government failure, then simply moving things from the economic arena into the political arena will not necessarily create the preferred outcomes that we have. And so this is the sort of core findings of public choice theory. And in doing that, Jim Buchanan really developed several different fields. He builds constitutional theory. He and Gordon Tullock, in their very important book, The Calculus of Consent, suggest to us many ways in which how we design a constitution takes both things, both our economic or individual interests in the policy outcomes into account, but also our interests in whether or not we can be driven to spend endless time in the political arena. So, for example, the most protective type of political approach to protect everyone's individual interest would be relying only on unanimity when we move into the political arena. But as both Buchanan and Tullock suggest, if you move to unanimity, it takes a very long time to work out the kind of problems that we face. How are we going to get absolute consensus across everyone that this is a better option? Only in the most extreme cases are we likely to get that kind of consensus. And if we don't have great consensus on what the political outcome should be, then we are going to have these trade-offs. Some people will be made worse off. So then that turns our attention to who are the people that are going to be made worse off by this movement from the economic arena into the political arena. And with the work of public choice, what we recognized very quickly was, if you're going to make important economic decisions in the political arena, people who care about those economic interests, corporations, different economic actors, are going to seek access to that political arena. What they coined the term of rent-seeking, especially in the work of Gordon Tullock. And if, in fact, you're rent-seeking, what that suggests is, now I'm going to build this right into the political decisions we reach, so that those economic interests are mandated to be in our general interest. But in fact, we know them not to be. So when let me give you an example. A utility company, it may be that utility companies, because they are essential types of goods and because they need large infrastructure and thus must be large and may be close to monopoly type, may not deliver the free market result that we want. However, regulating a utility company may lead to the kind of rent seeking where that utility feels it's in their interest to start to invest not in the economic delivery of electricity, but instead in the politics and campaign contributions that will allow them to continue to charge high rates for their electricity and for their services, and to not permit other competitors who might be able to come in and start to compete with them given new technologies. We saw this in the United States, for example, with the phone company. AT&T controlled all of the phone services, and as in doing so, they ended up trying to protect those much longer than cellular phones would have been able to compete. So that gives you a sense of, by focusing our attention on the interests in the political arena, just as we had in the economic arena, we might be able to use public choice to get better predictions and better understanding of the kind of important economic dilemmas that we face. In the next session, we're going to talk a little bit about the work of Eleanor and Vincent Ostrom as another contributing arrangement in mainline economics that tell us how we might not only think about the political as we think about the economic, but think about it from the possibility of an optimistic ability to self-govern and to create the rules for ourselves without the state.